Johnson, and this is another in our series of Proctor's Historical Committee videos to introduce you to the people that are critical to the history of Proctor's and also the present day. Today is Monday, July 21st, and we're very pleased to have with us James and Marty Petersen, and that's Petersen with an E.
Always. Yeah. Did it better last time.
So is E mean excellent?
Indeed. It's the Danish spelling.
Okay.
Which you need for coffee.
Or every day.
So these gentlemen are fixtures of the Proctor's backstage, and we'll start in with James. Maybe you could tell us how you ended up here and when you came. And
Sure. I actually started at Proctor's in 1988 as a summer intern. Worked for the month of August after graduating from the Full Sail Center for Recording Arts down in Orlando, Florida. And I had to do a 30-day internship as the completion of that process. And at the end of that summer, a position came up as a stagehand, so they hired me on at, I think it was $5, 25 cents an hour.
that was
The grand rate of back in 1988.
not quite the minimum wage at that time? Or?
It was actually a little above, almost $1 over, I think. Minimum wage was still around 3 and change back in the 80s.
So you've been here. Can you do the subtraction real quick?
It's 25 years. It'll be no, 23 years.
More than that. 88 to 14.
So
Almost
you've
26.
almost got your gold watch here.
26, yeah.
Heading for 26. Yep.
Well, Marty, how about you? How do you get to Proctor's?
I was laid off from a delivery job. I've been delivering plumbing parts, and there was a show on stage that was an ice show. They'd actually put down rubber matting and refrigerant coils and filled it with brine and froze it and did an ice skating show on the main stage. And someone didn't show up for work the night of the loadout, and since he was working here and knew I was not working, called me up and said, hey, we need someone to come and push a box. And I went down for the evening, and they were breaking up the ice and putting it in crates. We were wheeling it out the loading ramp and over the bridge that was over the moat that used to be around the old place.
Yes.
And wheeling the tubs out into the back corner and dumping the ice off. And after that, my name was on the list of people that were available for work. And when CATS came through, they put me on for that, did a load in and a load out. And
You just slowly grew upon us.
indeed. And also I had 35 millimeter movie projection experience over at the old Mohawk Mall, and Clayton Barney was the main stage movie projectionist. It wasn't even the main stage, it was just the stage.
One and only.
The only stage. And Clayton, I knew Clayton from the mall days, and he said, well, we do movies here, would you like to run some movies? So I started filling in with that, and pretty soon I was on 2 or 3 days a week instead of a day a month. And after a while, I started doing stage work, because Clayton also did lighting and so forth. So he was actually your supervisor for a while.
Well, we're
Contemporary.
relatively equals. He took on more of the responsibility of the role of the technical director, which is my position now, to manage the production staff, make sure equipment's on place and needed on the various stages now that we have 3 or 4 stages going on a regular basis. Clayton and I had actually worked under the old management, Eileen Eggleston, Tony Larson, and Mark Rasage, and then there's half a dozen stagehands who had been slowly moving on to other things. They'd been here probably since we reopened in the 70s, some of them. So they'd gone on to other careers. By the time Clayton was actually in charge of what was going on here, everybody else from the upper management staff had moved on to other things or retired for health reasons, like Eileen. So at one point it was just the 2 of us doing pretty much everything, setting up lights, curtains. We had a contract with the IATSE stage local to provide a sound guy for a show. So we would bring in people as needed for various positions, and then a lot of part-timers for actually running in-house shows that needed more than a couple of people. And then the big shows were and still are run by bringing in additional help from the stage labor union when you need 20, 30, 50 guys put together a show. Well, we still have a core crew of a half a dozen stagehands that work under me between the 2 rooms, putting up our lights and our curtains, setting up shows and running probably 70 to 80% of the general events, whereas the big Broadway productions have full-time 15, 20, 30-man crews running for the duration of their stays. So we have a small core of people that we use every day and supplement that as needed for the bigger events.
So the theater opened in '79 with the season of about 5 or 6 shows. And
That's a
then-
week's work now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing, and you came 9 years later, and you
Just
about
shortly
10
after that,
years
yep.
later. And when you first came, what was the level of activity, like in the, between 88, 90, early 90s?
it was steady, but not a huge amount. We typically did 4 week-long Broadway runs. We had a steady amount of local rentals, we call them now, local artists, production houses, community theater groups that would do things in September. And our season would run from October through May, and then June was always full of graduations and dance recitals, which it's still basically a steady diet of that through June. But only 100, 150 shows, official numbers, and then movies and events like that, typically in those earlier years. So in the summer times like this, we would have not a lot going on or go do other side work.
Although it would pick up for me because I would be doing
There'd
movies.
be a lot more movies, so he'd run full-time, whereas I would, when I started, it was just after the $1 Million Marathon, probably the next season. Dennis Madden was still the general manager, and when I hired on with him, he was also the mayor over in Scotia and ran Freedom Park over there, so.
So
he
you
said-
had your summer gig.
I had my summer gig lined up, but even that was only 4 shows a month on a Wednesday night, and that's grown similarly too. So as our summers got busier there, our summers got busier here, and I'm kind of stuck in the middle of, I need to be on 2 stages at the same time throughout a lot of the summer.
So Marty, in all this time that the 115 shows were going on, you were working on those shows, but also showing a tremendous amount of movies
Yeah, I
here.
spent a lot of time upstairs with the 35 millimeter system. Plus working in other venues, the Palace, the used to be the Knickerbocker Arena, Times Union Center now, SPAC, RPI Fieldhouse, Troy Music Hall used to do a lot more productions that would use our services. We worked for a guy named Dick Regnier, who was one of the early IATSE stagehands here before, for example, like the orchestra lift used to not be piston powered. It was just put up scaffolding and set shelving on it. And he was in that era. And of rental contractor as well. I had a company called Newth Lighting that we ran a lot of our surplus equipment from, doing side jobs for him, load up a truck and go do a school, Jefferson School up in Princetown or out in, various schools that would call up his lighting company and ask for 10 units to shine on the kids' recital or some such thing. So I got a lot of experience with lighting side of it. Ran spotlights for a lot of the shows. Didn't do so much of the fly rail until we did the expansion in 2005.
2005, coming on 10 years since the
You were
expansion.
kind of a freelancer with a base here at Proctors.
In a sense, yeah.
And I think it's always been interesting to me that Proctors hires people. I mean, today, we hire people, but when a union show comes in, they go and work as a union contractor.
Right.
Just right,
Transition, yeah.
The staff pretty much are all members of the local as well, so it's a protection in both directions for the staff that they can't be put out of work just because a union show comes in, and it protects the theater because we have a sound guy, electrician, video operators, fly operators, and riggers, so that our interests are represented even when it's an outside crew or the local members that live around here
The day
work
hands,
here,
right.
but they'll work whatever venue they're needed at from day to day. So,
Right. They don't have keys. We have keys to the building. So
so it's a vested interest in making sure
That's
things
the
are taken care of
prestige.
and
it is.
operated properly.
so is the stage, well, not today, but long ago, the stage was your main purview?
Yep.
And you had sound equipment in the back, kind of just jury rigged into a couple rows?
Well,
Well, they had a proper sound system that had been designed local vendors like Specialized Audio Video is a big supporter and provided the current sound system. They had actually put together the original sound system, and when Dan Sheehan started, he was able to shepherd in an upgrade to the original sound system, which is basically just a glorified home stereo, if you will, and a large center cluster that helped fill the bulk of the needs of the room. So Specialized Audio since then has grown into a company that supplies touring sound packages for shows. They do installs in casinos in Vegas. They did an install for the Blue Man Group in Germany. So the whole region has grown in the arts, the technology, and the support services, and the amount of work over the past 20 years. Everything's kind of risen together.
The other venue that we worked on that should get mentioned is the GE, before the GE, the Black Box Theater. What do we call that? Proctors 2.
Proctors 2, yeah. That was
It
actually
used to be down where Villa Italia is now. It was used to be a warehouse, and they gutted it and turned it into a small black box theater, and groups like Blue Man Group played there.
Way before they were
Way
famous.
Way before, yeah.
They were just some guys with blue paint on their face and some drums. And I actually saw them for the first time in the Knott Memorial Chapel over there in Union College. Then we put up Proctors 2 and did a bunch of events there.
Did that last, what, 3 or 4 seasons?
It was a
at
couple
that
seasons
location?
under Alan Bryce, who was general manager for a while, and his wife, Maria Bryce,
Then
did some of that
Maria
production.
ended up writing a show
Hearts
for
of
the
Fire.
stage.
Right.
Yes, that was the first time I
With
saw
a-
how
with an
badly
infant
fly rails were
baby.
going.
Appeared.
I saw a danger of the fly rail. My position now is the fly rail. I operate pull the ropes that move the curtains and scenery, the flying scenery. And at the time, I was a spotlight operator, and James was doing the fly rail for that show. And there was an entrance where a doorway has to fly up, and she comes through, and then the door closes down behind her. And she did not step far enough downstage, and when the door closed, it hit her on the head, to which she responded with a, "Oh man," and a stagger, but didn't move. And he said, "Huh." And he took it up and he hit her again. At which point she staggered out on stage and started
Somebody
acting.
finally got her out of
And
the
he
way
goes,
of the
"Oh no,
scenery."
Lance, this is great." You can't see anything from off in the wing. So
And so what happened about that?
she
Have
kept
you
acting.
fixed it?
Well, since then, she learned not to stop in the doorway. Because that's all we can do.
Maybe she ended her stage career.
Oh,
No,
she
no,
kept going.
she's been around for many other productions. Well, shoot, they were dressed in the colonial era costume, so she had her hair up in a big bun on top of her head,
Nice
so she had a
bonnet.
nice
She looked-
pad on top of her.
Didn't knock her out or make her
Uniformed
bleed
her.
or anything, but it definitely got her
It's going to
attention.
be like football, we have to worry about concussions.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about, isn't safety on the stage one of the things that you are most concerned about?
Absolutely, because there's so many people working frequently in the dark. There's always things on the floor. There's things
Moving overhead.
overhead that move to different heights. Normally they could be 75 feet in the air, and sometimes they're right here in front of you. And you
And very heavy.
can be looking at something. An electrician could be working on a light or cable on the ground, stand up and turn around, and now there's a piece of scenery or an iron bar or something that's coming behind them.
Silently.
They don't know it's there and clunk into something. So
Because it is very silent when those things all move.
yeah, they make
That's the
very,
idea,
very
yeah.
little noise, especially with the amount of volume. When a lot of people are in there and they're all yelling, trying to communicate with people up on the grid overhead, up in the roof basically of the stage, talk to people out the front of the house in the balcony under the soundboard. So
And
there's
just-
half a dozen
yeah.
people in each department, and they're all yelling amongst themselves, yelling through the building, yelling back and forth. The lighting department or the sound department needs to put something on a fly rail, they have to yell over to the flyman to bring in the baton.
So
He
everyone's
has to
working-
yell up to the guy up on the pan to put the weight on it. Once it's ready, he's got to yell to tell the people on the floor. You can load it, you can unload it. So just a
So are
lot
people
of
that work
noise.
professionally pretty careful when they're,
Yeah, well, they don't
For
last
the most
long.
part. Yes, you always have to watch out for the greenhorns, you call them. You can always tell if, especially with a large show, you see people sitting at the table filling out their paperwork. You go, okay, that's someone you got to watch out for in the next hour or two, because either they're going to hurt you or get hurt, or both at the same time.
so you like have to be their guardian angel for a
Little
little
bit.
while
It helps.
until they get the drift?
And some people never get the drift, and they move on to other careers. I don't know if we've ever incapacitated anybody.
Well, let's hope not.
I did one time.
He did one time.
That was, hey, Blue's Clues.
Similar action. The person was standing in the wrong place.
Exactly, a large show, Blue's Clues, just a kid show. You'd think it's a tame little event, but there was a scene with a fast-moving curtain flying. It has to come in from out of view to the deck in about 4 seconds, so it's moving 25 feet in 4 seconds. And it's a soft curtain, but it has a piece of 3/4 inch iron pipe in the bottom to keep it flat and straight.
Stretched out.
And a prop hand was waiting for a piece of scenery or piece of prop to come off, but the stage manager forgot which side of the stage she was on, so he was waiting on the wrong side of the stage for the prop. It never came because it exited stage left instead of stage right. My cue was called. I flew the piece in fast, and this is what I'm working on. A piece of rope is in front of me, and the line goes up to the grid, out to the stage, and directly behind me, where over my shoulder, and I can't see a thing, is the pipe. And he was standing just a little too far on stage, and the fast-moving piece of pipe came down and just the tip caught him on the top of his forehead. And you know, it was still moving at full speed because he was 6 feet off the ground. I was going to slow it down and land it on the deck, and instead, the end of it stopped 6 feet in the air. As if you took a long stick and whacked someone like that. And he was already, he had suffered Bell's palsy or some sort of health issue, so he already had you know, it really did no good for him. Yeah.
It's a serious matter.
And there's no helmet or anything like that. He was just working out there.
When we, you know, every once in a while, you send an email out to the staff and say, if you don't need to be on the stage, don't be on the stage. Because of exactly that reason, because.
And other reasons as well. There's other overhead stuff. There's electrical things like high power, high voltage connections that are being made, or you know, feeding power to a moving scene that would maybe take off and start traveling by itself. If you know, if someone cued the movement, you know, they don't say, and you know, scenery moving. They know where it's going to happen during the show, and if someone who is not familiar with it happens to be in that area, they're going to get run over because you're not going to get a warning that it's moving.
So when you have a show come in, what is it you work from that gives you your direction as far as what you're supposed to do?
It depends on who's producing the show and how large of an event it is. A lot of what we do, Keith Schmidt, our production manager, works in advance with the companies, gets all their details, plans for their sound system needs, lighting system needs. We don't really do a lot with scenery or staging. We mostly just do the curtains and white and black drops and a few other curtains that have effects in-house. But we'll get a blueprint of a lighting rig, and then our electrician and the stagehands will put up the lights to their needs. Other times, we take all of our curtains, all of our lights and sound system down, and the big shows bring everything and put all of their own stuff back in place.
Every last thing.
In which case, they'll have department heads as we have department heads, and we'll assign them a number of people that they've predetermined when they build the show during a tech rehearsal. And they'll just basically have a department head with a couple assistants. He'll take 10 local stagehands, and each guy gets 4 or 5 guys, and they know how their show goes together, and the hands basically just plug stuff together based on number, color markers, things like that on tape, or somebody's just walking along going, put this here, and lay it out.
Right.
So
A lot of the equipment is fairly standard, so you'll know that it needs to be plugged in to the certain kind of cable, and then once that's connected, you have to use a piece of string we call tie line to tie it up, secure the bundle so there's a neat run, nothing's drooping off. And any stagehand will know that you have to bring your crescent wrench to work, and you have to be able to tie a bow. And other than that, you try not to put your hands any place that'll be pinching you, and try not to run over your buddy's foot, because a lot of times a line of boxes will come off the truck and everyone's pushing a crate, and if you stop short and the person behind you doesn't, they'll hit you in the Achilles tendon. And so people actually have...
You're very dramatic about all these problems.
You can get wrecked. You can get wrecked badly.
career-ending injury is just
Yeah.
seconds away.
If it tears your foot off. So when people have actually gotten in the habit of, when they stop with the box, they'll raise their rear foot and put their toe up so that they get hit in the heel, not in the back of the leg.
And kind of kick back basically, because you know the guy behind you may not know
Well, I
you're
see that
stopping.
you need to be alert.
All the time.
So tell me, when the stage expansion occurred, what were the major changes from your point of view as far as what you were able to do, how you did your job?
The biggest changes really were just the volume of the stage space itself. where originally it was about 55 feet from floor to ceiling, the working height of where the scenery could be hung and taken out of view of the proscenium, the portal that the audience looks through like a picture frame. There's space above and off the sides that all the scenery and pieces can get staged out of view. So it became taller,
Taller, wider.
fairly
Wow.
deeper. Now it's 72 feet to the grid.
Yep.
But even that is a little bit low in some cases. Some things, like the Russian shows, have these grand drops from the Moscow Ballet that are 40 feet tall. You fly it up, it's still hanging at 30, 35 feet, which sometimes interferes with wanting to have full view of a tall drop. So places like the Palace actually has a 90-foot ceiling, but they don't really hang much large scenery there. The other big change is where they moved the fly rail, which is sort of the heart of how everything works in the theater over stage, from the stage left side against the wall that's common to the arcade to the stage right side, and added about 30 feet of width to that side. So the overall stage went from just over 60 feet wide to just
100
over
now.
100 feet wide, from about 35 feet deep to 55 feet deep, and from 55 feet tall to about 75 feet tall. That's the volume of the cube that we can work in to put all the equipment in, whether it's part of the live show or cases that have to be stored, or the machinery that drives automation, like you're talking about, set pieces that move around the deck, have winch controllers, and the lighting person has a space to sit with his board, and props people have that room to spread out all their little hand props and things like that around the room. So having much more space to spread out has made a big difference, and was really critical, as people have said, to actually doing these new shows. They're so much bigger now. Typically, a big Broadway show would travel with 8 tractor trailers full of equipment, and they'd leave at least the volume of one on the truck when they came here. Now shows are up to 18 to 20 trucks worth of equipment for things like Phantom of the Opera and Lion King, and they're able to bring it all in. We did Peter Pan, which Kathy Rigby had been touring for years, several times here, and after the expansion, it was the first time they actually put the entire pirate ship set together, and the entire Lost Boys Island set together, the entire house in the manor, because it could actually all be sitting on
Assembled
stage in
and
the
pushed off
wings,
stage,
and it could
exactly.
actually fit on stage when it was in its presentation mode.
When we had Showboat here in the old venue, and the stage right wall was only 9 feet off, there was a train or a cruise ship that was the full width of the stage and had to sail off into the wing, and in the old venue they had to disassemble it as it came off because they were pushing it off, and people are taking pins out and slapping it against the
No one
wall.
got injured?
And no one got hurt then? No.
Lots of practice.
Okay.
The other change is the fly system went from 50 line sets to 85 line sets, and the weight capacity went from an average of 600 pounds to 1,400 pounds.
Just so people will understand, a line set is what, one bar?
One bar, the cables that support it, the pulleys in the grid that change the direction of the cables, because what the bars full width of the stage is 63 feet, and 6 lift lines go up to pulleys in the grid and then turn 90 degrees off stage and run to a single wheel that then turns it vertically down to the arbor, which is the bracket the counterweight sits on. There'll be a video about all this eventually. So every 6 inches of stage depth is another pipe position. So if the stage needs a curtain just so, they hang it on pipe number 12, and if they need it 6 inches away, they put it on line 13 instead. If a heavy scenery piece weighs 400 pounds, we could hang it in the old theater, but if it weighed 900 pounds, you had to combine 2 pipes, chain them together, and operate 2 ropes side by side, or sometimes the biggest one I moved was the corn row from Oklahoma, which was 3 line sets, 3 pipes lashed together, and had to operate 3 ropes in a hand bundle to move the scene. Now I can do it all on 1 line set, and so they've started bringing in 2,000-pound pieces. So you still have to combine pipes and operate 2 hand lines. But Beauty and the Beast has the winner for heaviest scenic piece, which was a full 2,000-pounder. and that has to move during the show by hand and not crash into anybody and not get out of control.
You say move by hand. It's
If
already
it's-
done.
Well,
it's
not driven
balanced.
by a winch or a
Right, there's no
motor.
motor to it. It's a 2,000-pound object and 2,000 pounds of counterweight, so it's in balance. And then when you pull the rope, you add 10, 20, 50 pounds of inertia to it, and it overcomes the balance and it moves in whichever direction. So literally moving a ton by pulling a rope, one person.
With
Yeah, then-
counterweights.
Well, with counterweight, exactly.
Right.
And then slowing it down so it doesn't crash
Right.
onto the floor, fly up and crash into the
So
ceiling.
you've got more room to maneuver.
Got a lot more room to
You-
maneuver.
You also have a different loading situation. You
Yeah.
have the three,
Right. Well,
Yeah.
originally, the building back in the, I'm not even sure how they originally loaded in back
Yeah,
in the original
in the
20s.
20s, they did not have a loading bridge. They just floor loaded it.
Well, as far as getting in and out, getting equipment in and out of the building. During our time in the 70s and 80s, they closed down what used to be storefronts on the back side of the stage on Stratton Plaza, which was originally probably Smith Street before they turned it to a pedestrian plaza, and put in a garage door, and then the rest of the space was our crossover backstage space for setting cases or putting equipment operators, or even setting up a lunch for 50 or 100 people when you have to feed them at 2 in the morning while you're packing up a show. So we had one single garage door, which for a while, when the canal went around the downtown center block, this 400 block, you'd have to go up over a little bridge and then down the ramp. Eventually, they took all that out. We had a flat floor, but still a single door. So trucks would have to park on the street or on the plaza, unload, and everything would funnel into that one single entrance and end up on stage. Now with the new space, they actually push, because the stage house itself is now deeper, it exists where the old facade of the building was on the street, and now we have another 20 feet or so of depth right out to the actual edge of what was the street back in the original design of the city. And we now have 3 large doors that are the full height of a tractor trailer when it backs up. So when the door rolls up, the door is up at the top of the truck. And then we use ramps to bring things out of the trucks. And that got us
Or
off the
forklift.
street, gives us a little more protection from the weather, because Stratton Plaza is basically a wind tunnel. If the wind blows in
Between the
the
lottery
neighborhood,
building.
that blows 2 or 3 times as fast and would
Yeah.
really channel down and be very cold in the wintertime. And you'd be unloading on ice, snow, whatever the surface was at the time. The new,
very dangerous when
very
it's
dangerous,
ice.
yeah. The new loading area is all snow melted, so the concrete underneath it is heated, so that when it snows, it all just melts, turns to water, and runs off to a drain, and you don't have to worry about ice accumulating around the trucks, which, even with the new space, they can't often come right up against the building like you would see a traditional loading dock, because then
Kind
there's
of
not
a
enough
seal,
room
yeah.
to run out inside the building. If you had 3 ramps right in that space, they would all be right on top of each other. So a lot of times the trucks will sit out 10 or 12 feet from the building and unload, so that the ramp ends up hitting just inside the doorway. But it's increased the speed that we can operate. You can have a lot more coming and going, and the trucks don't necessarily have to leave when they're done unloading. A lot of shows will keep 2 or 3 of them parked in the dock. And then on the really big shows on the loadouts, you can put 2 more trucks out on the plaza. There's another door on the back corner of the crossover area, so you can send 3 trucks worth of stuff this way, 2 or 3 trucks worth of stuff that way. It gets everything out of the building and off the floor faster, because every show you'll put up lights, curtains, scenery, then they'll build a set. A lot of times they'll have their own show deck, kind of like the platform around here, maybe a few inches up to as much as a foot thick, full of tubing, lighting, cable runs, winch motor cables and controls like that. So either that has to go before everything comes down, or everything has to come down on top of it and then go out the door. So the more room you have to spread out during setups and teardowns, the faster and even safer you can go, because everybody's not tripping over each other. Have a show deck where you're pushing a case along and suddenly there's a 8-inch drop in what you think was a flat floor, because normally it's just a big open space. So getting out of each other's way is really the biggest issue for a lot of the large shows.
That's one of the major coordination efforts in a road crew, is have the electrician and the carpenter are able to work past each other. If you have lights to come down and you have a set to come down and they both need the same space, what you'll do is urge someone to work in the downstage area and someone to work in the upstage area so you can continue with your loading and unloading process. Some crews are very good at that. Some crews will totally jam each other up by accident or on purpose because they've been on the road for 10 months and they hate each other. And, you know, they...
It's too long a tour, right?
Too long a tour.
Yeah, some folks get along great. They've been out for 3 years and have no trouble, and other folks are freshly constituted and didn't like each other from a different tour, or they had a fight over who gets what bunk on the bus, or some nonsense.
Whatever it was.
Yes.
Or just the schedule they keep, because a lot of these
Yeah.
people, they'll load out on a Sunday, drive hundreds of miles riding in a bus overnight, and Monday morning they're right back at it some other town.
They got a
It's a
kind of
tough life for the traveling crews.
So now we still show movies, but what has changed about the movies that we show?
It's digital now. We don't even have a 35 millimeter projector in the building. It's all on
Assembled.
disc. Well,
If
okay.
anybody wants to buy one, we have one.
Yes, we have the parts. We have the parts to make a nice system, but the distributors don't have 35 millimeter prints anymore. They've stopped sending them around, and everything is on either a hard drive or a video disc, essentially a Blu-ray, and use a different kind of projector, different lighting intensity, different set of controls. So I had to learn.
And they don't have to go way up in the top either, up to the projection booth.
Well, we actually do because turn on the projector, but then it's operated from backstage now, so that's a little bit simpler. We used to have to carry cans of film, like 6 reels worth of film would weigh 60, 70 pounds, and you have to carry the cans up the stairs because there's no elevator. So you just
Yeah, this is
grab a
just for
handful.
people that, these are the stairs that go up to the top of the balcony.
up to that door right there.
And up there on the top is a projection room.
Right. Up an even steeper set of narrow stairs, which is even
Most
more
of the
scary.
public has never,
Hope not.
No.
and it's kind of difficult.
The
to get
occasional
there.
fireman, that's about it.
So that's changed, and the other thing is all the multiple venues you have. You
Right.
have the main stage, the GE Theater, you have,
The Education Center there's a small cabaret space down there, so you do some live shows and meetings, and that room is a very general space, but sometimes they'll need support from us, technical work. The Key Hall, occasionally they'll need us to put in some lighting or risers or help with a sound system. The Rob Alley stage, a very rudimentary sound system, but perennially someone's gone in because it's open mic night, public space, people will go and unplug
In the
it,
farmer's
make it
market
work for
and stuff.
them, and then be on their way, and then we get a phone call 5 minutes before somebody has a theater talk presentation or jazz show on a rainy day.
Because we
Yeah,
didn't have
exactly.
Right, and it's not working.
So how do they organize your time so you know what is supposed to be going on?
Group text.
Our fabulous internet-based web calendar is really
Which sometimes
The-
tells you where to go.
the holy grail of how we do things. We'll sit down, the operations department, which is Dan Sheehan, Chief of Operations, Cindy LaRoe, Paul Kazee, our house managers, Keith Schmidt, myself in the production department, maintenance and housekeeping managers sit down once a week. We look through the whole schedule for a week to 2 weeks ahead and look for conflicts, make sure information is in the events on the calendar so each department can go get the information they need for a setup, and then know proper timings, when to arrive, when things will end, and how to overlap it. And then we just kind of play a 3-dimensional chess game of who has to be where, what equipment has to be where, when to put it up, when to take it down, if they need someone to help them run on the smaller spaces. And my staff and the 2 guys that work in the GE Theater are pretty much 6-7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day
was
on
gonna
the
say.
busy times, and other times it slows down a lot in the summer. Now it's,
You don't work any
There's
8:30 to
no
4:30.
schedule.
no, there's no traditional
You're all on
40-hour
flex
week.
scheduling,
Indeed.
depending on need.
Right.
Anytime we've started shows, load-ins at 4 or 5 in the morning, and there's times when we work until 4 or 5 in the morning. So hopefully not in the same show. But
So it's a
it does
job
happen.
requirement that you're a flexible sleeper and.
Yes, my wife, if not for my wife's patience and tolerance, I would not have been able to maintain this career because she's taking care of the house and the 4 kids, and I'm constantly out the door we're working, for example, this year we're doing a show, Christmas Eve matinee. We're doing shows,
Eve matinee.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's.
New Year's Eve
and my
show.
birthday. Well, not my birthday, fortunately, this year.
You weren't hoping to get that off, were you?
Actually, it's coming up in a few days, so there's nothing much going on. But yeah, literally any given day, any given hour, any given weather. I don't think we've canceled the show for weather except one time. We
Canceled the Melodies of Christmas, and I think we
It
canceled.
wasn't canceled, it was rescheduled, and that was the day we had to do a show of melodies and then load out the show and then load in Christmas Carol and have it ready for a 10 a.m. kids show the next morning. So that's the kind of,
And then load it out to put, did you have to put
we didn't have to put them away.
back in?
They typically stayed a day or two, but that's also nominally the week that our Nutcracker production gets put together, which takes 2 or 3 days for us to get our scenery out of storage, take down whatever may be in the air and rearrange it to our specific show, which
You know, they call
It's
for a
the
certain
same year
light
to
block,
year.
so it has to be, the lights for Nutcracker are completely different from the Melodies lighting.
right.
And if we have to do Melodies, Nutcracker, and Christmas Carol all in the same 9-day stretch, our lighting guy will actually combine the plots. And this show gets most of what they like, but not quite all of it. And that show gets most of what they like, but not quite all of it. And it's all in the air, and we'll focus it and make it look good for you.
Which actually happens with a lot of the other productions too. If they're using different shows that are using our lighting equipment, the electrician Bruce will have to combine both plots or take
Hang
the
everything.
larger of the two, and then the smaller show gets a version of their plot that works out of the overall picture of a bigger show that has more lights and parts and pieces put into it.
And if the company sends the information ahead, we'll give them as much of what they want as we can. But if they don't send it, there's a phrase, call it like you want it or take it like you get it. And show comes in and they, well, we sent you the lighting plot yesterday. I said, well,
We hung the lights last week.
when Kodo came, the first time Kodo came after the renovation, they did literally say, well, we sent you the lighting plot when? Oh, this morning. Well, this is the lights we have. And they said, well, you need to take that down and hang our lights. And we said, we don't have time for that. Your show is tonight. Like I said, well, I need my light plot. And Bruce said, I'm not taking down these lights and hanging up your lights. Let's focus these lights. And the two of them stood over a table glaring at each other for 25 minutes. Hang it. No. Hang it. I won't. You need to take it down. I won't take it down. And finally the guy said, fine, focus it. We'll make it look good. And it looked great. And the audience never knew until now.
That was before the dust issue came
That
up.
was, yes. Oh, yeah. They were very unhappy about the dust from the construction. They're still, during the Nutcracker, we had ballerinas and guys in hard hats crossing each other on the stage.
Well, it's clear that you have many adventures.
Oh, we have. We've had a few.
Is there anything we haven't talked about you'd like to mention? Any unusual show experiences? We've covered a lot.
I think a lot of the really strange things, at least that I end up in, outside of now having all these different venues that we work in, we've always done a lot of things in the community. The Zoppo Circus that happens down there in the empty lot next to Villa Italia a couple times. We've gone and helped Mona Gola put productions on up in the tennis court up in Central Park. So we get sent a lot of times with a truckload of equipment to go put together a party for a supporter or things like that. And we end up in some pretty odd places. For the circus last year, because it was such a haul, even though it's only a block away, the box office people would have to go down for every show with a cash drawer, concessions would have to go down with drinks and food, hot dogs and things like that. So we actually borrowed a golf cart from the municipal golf course, one of their EMS carts basically. So it had a large flatbed space you could carry a person on a stretcher out of. So I had to go with my truck and my little garden trailer and pick up this golf cart. And I get there, and just me, and this thing barely fits on my trailer because we called somebody and said, oh yeah, it's this size by this size. Oh, no problem, it'll fit, come on up. We get there and realize you could just squeak this piece of equipment onto the trailer and bring it on down to the theater. And then I spent the day shuttling people, well, the weekend really, shuttling people back and forth up and down Broadway in a golf cart.
Well,
5 or 6 people, like a scene from MASH where they're all hanging off the sides because the equipment has to be on the cart. And You got somebody in the front with me
So
and
you
two
have
people sitting
other
on
duties
coolers.
as assigned.
As
whatever.
assigned, yeah.
My other duty as assigned is if it has to hang up, they call me. So all the stuff in the atrium, all that colorful planet stuff, they said, we're getting you a lift. We're getting you some stuff, and you wanna.
Who's the least afraid to get in
Who's
it?
the exactly, and the lift that fit in through the door of the GE by a Scotia on either side. I mean, we thought we were going to take the frame off, and it's a 45-foot, 50-foot boom lift that could spin 340 degrees, and it could elevate, and it could extend, and it could twist, and it could move all around. So I had to learn how to operate that, because here's the machine, and there's the art, and there's the artist, and
And he's watching you.
They'd like to see it.
they would like to see it like this, and they go, "Can you get it here?" And I go, "Yeah, just a minute." And I actually had to work out a rigging suspension system overhead with cables that basically wrap around various columns, and I created a spider web almost that you can hang from. And they go, "Well, this is what has to hang," and I go, "That's not going to support itself. It's not strong enough to hang on its own. It's just going to tear apart that cubic sun there." So I actually had to reinforce the piece in the middle, figure out a way to get power to it. You know, they just hand you an assignment. Like the artist says, "I'd like it to look like this." And I said, "I can't make that happen. All I can do is this." And she goes, "Well, okay." That was the sea installation, the under the sea installation for the 3D movies, Sea Monsters.
The IMAX, iWorks 3D movie.
The one previous to the Planet installation. First, it was the Bug.
But they are keeping them for several years now.
Oh yeah, because it's a
That's because it
giant
costs so much
space.
to rent the lift, and we have no time to spare the crew to go take it all down. We actually received a donation from a local company that had a trade show display of truss. You can't see it on the camera, of course, like this stuff. And they didn't want to pay to store it anymore, so they donated it to us. And I've always wanted what we call a mother grid truss. It's a big square with some additional support structure to it to go into that atrium space, so we don't have to work with just one guide wire cable, and maybe the whole thing could be on motors. It could travel up and down, and then you could bring the piece down to the floor,
And work
hang
out
everything
there.
off the mother grid, and fly it back out. So this past winter, we went and picked up all this truss in a giant box in my truck again, and we're just waiting for time and to get a lift to get in, take down the solar system display that's up there, and put this other mechanism together,
And then it'll all be easy.
and then it'll all hopefully be a lot easier. But
So is
there's
it-
always the investment of we got the truss for free, but we need several $1,000s worth of motors and other equipment to make the system work for us. So it's always
That's
well,
the trouble
that comes
with
back to
free
Karen
stuff.
Johnson's department to go raise some money for these
Free stuff.
projects that we have put together.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, and it's just to hear all the things you do. You have partly your own vocabulary. You obviously have a lot of adventures.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about the job for us, if you go on a show and you travel, you see a different town every day, every week, you meet new people. We stay in one spot, everything comes through our door. It's always different, it's always new people. And then you get a pattern. A lot of people come back year after year with different shows, sometimes with the same shows. And then a large part of what we do, particularly with these community events, we're just handed largely a blank slate. Somebody comes and has the vision of a theater show, but hasn't produced a show. So our staff, we do it like this. So we'll pull together a lighting show, we'll look for you, we'll get video clips together for backgrounds, we'll run rehearsals, help them time and coordinate things, organize things. So you're always solving puzzles and solving problems, which if you thrive on that sort of thing, which most stagehands do, you really can have a lot of fun with it, and you have a lot of creative leeway to produce stuff without necessarily being tied down to just being a director or just being this particular skill set in a community
So you're
theater.
helping everybody.
We're helping a lot of different people, are always working on different things, and generally they're always happy with the product that they end up with. I'd say the dance recitals in June, we do probably 10 or 15 different dance schools. To us, they're pretty much always the same product. To all the parents and the teachers, it's the kids' annual show, so it's a big thing for them. So you want it to look nice. And a lot of times they just don't really know what it is they're trying to put together, and then we'll lay it all out for them and say, oh, Great. Just what I was looking for.
One of the dance schools came through, and the director, Mara Merritt, said, have any of you guys ever used one of those Air Shark remote control swimming flying fish? I said, no. She says, if you can operate it, you can have it after the show. So she brought in the helium inflatable shark with the remote control swimming tail and used it in the show, production of Under the Sea. And I had to not only fly the curtain, but also operate this swimming shark over the dancers' heads. And it was only marginally controllable. And sometimes it would climb, or sometimes it would dive, or it would get blown sideways. And I'm trying to make it look like it's swimming. And the video looks great, but one day when I was
That's all that counts, isn't it?
the practice day beforehand, it actually got away from the stage and flew out into the audience, sailed up into the dome, and nestled into the chandelier. And I'm standing there going,
How do you get that?
wow.
What now?
Now what? So I just jostled it, and it kind of lumbered out of the lighting and swirled back down and came back down to the stage. Oh, this is great.
So the next day you had a
The next day I made sure it stayed way upstage, nowhere near the
now you
proscenium.
own it. What are you going to do with it?
It's just sitting in a deflated pile, but one of these days I'll get another can of helium and send it around.
I have to get a license for it now.
Exactly. I'll have it challenge the drone, yeah.
Right.
That would be
Cool.
funny. If the
Shark
remote
first
UAV drone is flying around, and all of a sudden a shark comes at it from across the water. Now that's going to be funny.
Well, enough of this levity.
Back to the serious business of theater.
Yes, it is, and I hope that our audience has really enjoyed James and Marty Petersen with an E, and all their
He's older. No, I'm older.
and all their tales. Now we're not going to. Well, that's
Yes.
settled.
Check out my blog.
This is my big brother.
So anyway, this lovely program has been brought to you by the Schenectady Proctors Historical Committee. It's Monday, July 21st, and it's part of a project to capture those who have made Proctors possible in Schenectady.
Did you feel the tranquilizer dart?
Thank you for watching.
Good night, folks.